Alright guys, Carl Schuth from Snorkel.tv. We're going to jump right into part 2 of our bubble maker. Alright, we're talking about making particle systems with TimelineMax. And in part 1, we already have some bubbles being generated. They're growing and fading in and then also shooting up. Well, we also want to make them zigzag or wiggle back and forth. We want to have a little left-right motion going on. Alright, so one thing we could do here is, and let's do it, let's add a new animation. We're going to say nestedtl dot insert a new tween max. Alright, and we're going to say 2, and let's just tell the bubble to take, I don't know, maybe 2 seconds, and we're going to change the x value by, let's just say 50. Let's just show you what this does. Alright, we're going to talk about this. It's pretty important here. Alright, so now I'm telling all of my bubbles to go to an x of 50. And what that means is that all the bubbles are now going to be shooting up to the same pace. Alright, now that kind of looks cool, but it's not necessarily what I want. So I want them all to be moving back and forth. Now we're going to put what's referred to as a relative value in here. So in quotes, I'm going to say minus 100. And what that's going to do is make every bubble go 100 pixels to the left of wherever it started. Okay? So now the bubbles are all going to just be sort of going over to the left as if there's just a slight current. So that's a relative value. Now, I don't want them just going to the left. I want them coming back to the right. So what I'm going to do is add a repeat value here, and I'm going to say repeat 1, and I'm also going to say yo-yo true. So what that means is that we're going to start where we start, go 100 pixels to the left, and then repeating once means we're going to go back to the right. And yo-yo means go back to where, play in reverse basically. So here, you'll see now that each bubble goes left, and then it should come back to the right. Well, we're not seeing it come back to the right for a good reason, and I'm glad this happened. Because we're taking 2 seconds for it to go all the way to the left, and hardly any of these bubbles are on the stage for more than 2 seconds. They're either on the stage for somewhere between 1 and 3 seconds. So let's make this left to right speed much quicker, okay? Let's make it 0.2 seconds. So now you'll see left, you see that? There's a little bit of a wiggle. Now, it's happening way too fast. So let's make that a little bit slower. So let's just say 0.5 seconds. All right. And now you'll see a little bit of this back and forth going on. They're all going to the left 100 and then getting pulled back. So there's one little wiggle going on. I want to do a few things with this wiggle. I want to have it wiggle a random amount of times, and I also want them to be wiggling different distances. All right, I don't want every bubble to move 100 pixels. So I'm going to create another variable called wiggle. All right, that's going to be a number equal to whatever random range gives me when I pass in a number between 25 and 50. So that means we're only going to be wiggling between 25 and 50 pixels to the left. To put a string value in as a property or a value of one of these properties, such as x, what I'm going to do is if I just say wiggle, that means that they're, it's not going to be a relative value. If I have a wiggle value of 50, that just means they're going to go to an x of 50 and then come back, and we're going to get some really crazy stuff here. You'll see they're all shooting across the stage because they're all wiggling to an x value between 25 and 50 pixels, an absolute value. To make this a relative value, we're just going to convert it to a string. I told you there's a lot of little goodies you're going to get here. String, wiggle. So now you'll see that some bubbles wiggle more than others. Or maybe you don't see it. It doesn't matter. It's actually happening. All right. So we have a random amount of wiggle But what you may notice too is that all of the bubbles sort of start off going one way and then back. The wiggle is always in the same direction. And right here, it's a positive wiggle, all right? There's no negative. So they're all going to the right and then back to the left. And again, to the right, back to the left, right, left, right, left. Well, I want something to go left, right, left, right. So what we're going to want to do is also toggle this wiggle amount. We're going to make it either positive or negative. So once we figure out whether it's 25, 50, 35, or 40, I'm going to say wiggle equals, and then I'm going to do a little one-line conditional statement. I'm going to say math.random, which is going to give me a value between 0 and 1. I'm going to say, hey, if that's greater than 0.5, then wiggle is going to be a positive value. Using this colon, that's the same as saying or else, it's going to be negative wiggle. All right, so this one little line of magic here takes the wiggle value and randomly sets it to be negative or positive. So now we're going to have some left-right wiggles and some right-left wiggles. So we have this random variance that just is like magic. I'm going to close this. And now back in Flash, what I want to do is also randomize the amount of times these tweens repeat. Now, it's important to note, let's just say one of these tweens going up takes 4 seconds to go all the way up, all right? Even though that's impossible because it's not in the random range we have here, let's just say it takes 4 seconds. Well, if we want that wiggle to happen multiple times, we have to consider the fact that let's just say the wiggle is 1 second, okay? All right, let's make that a 1. All right, so if it takes 1 second to go up, and each time we tween our x to the left or to the right, it takes 1 second, that means it's going to take 1 second to get to where it's going, 1 more second to get back. All right, so there's the repeat of 1. If I want this to play twice, well, then I can have 1 second to go to the right, another second to go to the left, and then another second to go back to the right, another second to go back to the left. So I can create 4 1-second tweens if my speed is in fact 4 seconds. So what I want to do is make sure I always have enough room to wiggle a few times while the bubbles are moving up. So here's what we're going to do. Instead of just hard coding this wiggle rate or duration, I'm going to say take the speed value and multiply it by 0.25. So that what that means is that each part of the wiggle or the zigzag, each zig and zag, is going to be a quarter of the total amount of time it takes one of these symbols to rise to the top. Knowing that I have that much time, I'm also going to say, you know what? Let's just repeat a random amount of times. Maybe not every bubble is going to go right, left, 4 times. I'm going to say, hey, maybe one of them just moves to the left once and then it kind of chills out. So I'm going to randomize the repeat value as well. I'm going to say a random number between, you always want them to repeat maybe at least once, but the maximum value is going to be, let's say, 4 times sounds good, right? So what this means is that it will repeat once, twice, 3 times, or 4 times. Okay? And it's important to note that this is really cool. All right, so let's test this out. And what you might see is that some bubbles are just simply wiggling more than others. Others are going to start their path going straight up, maybe a little bit sooner, but we definitely have a lot of random wiggle in here. Okay, so one more time, let's just take a look at that. Very cool. Now, again, since we're doing all this with a for loop, I just want to show you that if you want more bubbles, you know, we have this little variable up here. Dare I make 500 bubbles? I don't know. Let's test it out in a browser. Boom, 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 boom. There we go. It's looking pretty smooth. I'm realizing that I'm going to do the buttons in yet a third video, okay? So now that we got the wiggle, the animation here, and all that cool stuff, we're going to deal with the buttons in part 3. All right, so keep watching and just notice how 500 bubbles just look beautiful. There's so much randomness, and I feel like I'm swimming, and there's fish, and it's cool, and